Everything came together, somehow, in Atlanta. It wasn't smooth, it wasn't expected, but it felt like something that had been brewing for weeks. You could see it in the players' eyes, in the way they walked onto that field. Not a trace of doubt, just that quiet electricity. And then it hit. The Dolphins didn't just win. They dismantled Atlanta, piece by piece, until the scoreboard read 34-10, and all that was left was the sound of a team realizing its own potential. It's strange how sometimes everything just clicks, isn't it? Tua had said it earlier in the week, that they were close, painfully close, to putting everything together. And maybe he was right. Maybe this was that moment, the one they'd been waiting for, where talk and talent finally met execution. Because Sunday wasn't about luck or breaks. It was about control, about balance, about finally looking like the team they've been trying to become since Mike McDaniel first started shaping this group into his own vision. There was something different about the way Miami approached this game. It wasn't the usual pretty offense, all motion and flash. There was a bite to it this time. They went heavier, tougher, like they wanted to make a point that physical football still mattered in Miami. The call that summed it up? McDaniel pulling out Daniel Brunskill. Yeah, a sixth offensive lineman. That's not something you see in this scheme. In over 60 games, it hadn't happened once. But there he was, lining up like an extra wall of muscle, and you could almost feel the Falcons' defense sink a little when he checked in. It wasn't just about adding size. It was about intent, about sending a message. On those plays, Miami averaged over 5 yards per snap, but the numbers barely tell the story. The tone changed. The Dolphins dictated everything, where the line moved, how the linebackers reacted, even how Atlanta tackled. It felt like McDaniel had emptied his playbook, tossing every variation of power and zone he had. Pin and pull, lead, trap, stretch, all of it. And the running backs? They just followed the rhythm. Devon Achane ran like he was making up for lost time. Ollie Gordon too looked like he'd been waiting for a chance to show he belongs in this backfield. Jalen Wright added that burst that keeps defenses guessing. Together, they racked up nearly 200 yards from scrimmage. But what stood out wasn't just the yards. It was how those runs softened everything. The play action suddenly came alive. Tua could breathe. The Falcons started hesitating, guessing, reacting instead of attacking. That's when the other version of Tua appeared. The one that's calm, almost surgical, slicing up defenses with rhythm and timing. He threw 4 touchdowns, and none of them felt forced. He finished with 205 yards on just 26 attempts. But the stat line doesn't tell how effortless it looked. 17 of his last 19 passes connected. It was as if he entered some quiet zone, where every throw was already decided before the ball even touched his hands. The first touchdown. Vintage Tua. Smooth drop, play fake. Eyes holding the safety just long enough before firing to Achane in stride. Then another. A simple read to Gordon out of the backfield that looked like a check down but turned into a score. But the one that made everyone freeze came right before halftime. 10 seconds left. Pocket collapsing. Tua rolls right, flicks his wrist, and the ball cuts through the air like a whisper, straight into the hands of Malik Washington. His first career touchdown. And it couldn't have been prettier. 2 defenders closing in, both too late. Washington got both feet down and just smiled. And then there was Waddle, finally unleashed again. He caught a 43-yard bomb off play action, his third long reception in 4 games, like he was reminding everyone that this offense still stretches defenses when it wants to. He's quietly climbed the league charts, 12th in yards, tied for 14th in touchdowns. But numbers don't capture the energy he brings. Every time he touches the ball, something changes. The sideline wakes up. The crowd leans forward. This was what McDaniel had been hinting at all along. The creativity was still there, but now it had teeth. A mix of precision and punishment. Miami didn't dance around defenders. They ran through them. And when they threw, it came off those bruising runs that forced Atlanta to respect the ground game. Tua said afterward that McDaniel called a great game, and he wasn't wrong. But it was more than that. It was the execution, the trust between quarterback and coach, between line and backs, between every moving piece that finally moved in sync. The offensive line, so often the question mark, gave Tua time. Real time. He could scan, step, throw, reset. You could see the confidence building with every pocket that didn't collapse. And the defense? That was a show of its own. Because across the field stood Bijan Robinson, one of the most dynamic runners in the NFL. And yet, by the end of the game, he looked ordinary. Just 25 yards on 9 carries. That's not a typo. The Dolphins' front seven smothered him. They played with this quiet aggression, like a group that had taken it personally. Every gap filled, every cutback closed, every inch earned. Jordan Brooks was everywhere again. 10 more tackles, a sack, 3 for loss. He leads the league in tackles now, but stats don't show how often he sets the tone. There's something almost defiant about the way he plays, calm face, violent intent. After the game, he said he loved these matchups. You could tell he meant it. He talked about respecting Bijan, admiring him even, but you could sense the competitive fire underneath. You kind of lick your chops a little, he said, half smiling. And he did. Every snap was a statement. Miami's defense looked fast, sure, but more than that, they looked unified. No freelancing, no confusion. Just pure, disciplined aggression. The communication between the linebackers and safeties was seamless. Even when Atlanta tried to mix it up with motion or quick passes, it didn't matter. The Dolphins closed space faster than the Falcons could find it. There were moments where you could see the Falcons starting to break. Missed blocks, rushed throws, body language shifting. And every time Miami smelled weakness, they pressed harder. It wasn't about showing off. It was about suffocating the opponent. And they did exactly that. You could feel it, the energy, the edge, that sense of control that good teams carry when they realize they can dictate everything. Miami hadn't looked like that in a while. They'd been good, exciting even, but not this complete. This was different. This was the kind of win that doesn't just count in the standings, it echoes. It lingers in the locker room, in the way players talk, in the way they believe. Tua walked off the field with that quiet grin, helmet in hand, like someone who finally saw the picture he'd been trying to paint. McDaniel, arms crossed, couldn't hide his satisfaction either. He's always talking about process, about growth, about stacking good days. Well, this was the kind of day that shows what all those little steps can lead to. And maybe that's what makes it all so interesting. The idea that this wasn't even perfect. There were still drops, a few missed blocks, some penalties that could have killed drives. Yet Miami pushed through all of it without losing rhythm. That's what good teams do. They bend, they adjust, they respond. Somewhere in that second half, it stopped feeling like a contest and started feeling like a message. To the league, to themselves, maybe even to those who'd started doubting whether this version of the Dolphins could dominate away from home. Because dominance on the road, that's what great teams do. And this was the second biggest road win of McDaniel's tenure. Not a fluke. A statement. Every successful team needs one of these. That defining afternoon when everything clicks, and you can't quite explain why. Only that it finally looks the way it's supposed to. The Dolphins had been close for weeks. You could sense it. Then Sunday came, and the switch flipped. So maybe it's not about perfection after all. Maybe it's about timing, about belief, about learning when to turn promise into proof. Whatever it was, Miami found it in Atlanta,